Hey, what's up everybody? Tony with Lido, Loca, back for another video. Hey, one of the first things I encountered when I went cruising for the first time was a little bit of cruise cabin shock. Now, I'd traveled quite a bit before I went on my first cruise, and I'd stayed in a lot of hotel rooms, and I went into cruising probably with the misconception that cruise cabins were just like hotel rooms. They're not. In today's video, we're going to break down a few differences between a cruise cabin and a hotel room. So let's talk cruise cabins. How are cruise cabins different than your hotel room? Well, the first one and the most obvious way that cruise cabins are different than a hotel room is the size. USA Today did some research and found that in the United States, the average hotel room is about 350 square feet in size. Now, if we look at Carnival, which has some of the largest interior cabins in cruising, their average interior cabin is about 185 square feet. That's a pretty big discrepancy. 100 square feet makes a lot of difference when you're thinking about how much room you have to stretch out. And it's comparable as you move up the different categories of hotel rooms and the different categories of cruise cabins. They all get a little bigger as you go, but proportionately, cruise cabins are much smaller than regular hotel rooms. Now, not surprisingly, that small cruise cabin size also translates into the small size of the cruise cabin bathroom. In many hotels, you have spacious bathrooms with plenty of counter space, a big tub, sometimes the toilet set off to itself. Not so when you go cruising. A cruise bathroom, very tight, limited counter space most of the time, and the throne is right there next to what is, for the most part, a stand-up shower. Very rare in a regular cruise room to find a bathtub. So this is what you got to picture. You've got a stand-up shower, a toilet right next to it, and you can barely turn and hit the sink. That's about how big a cruise bathroom is. Now, the difference doesn't end just with the size of the bathroom. It's the way the toilet works which catches people off guard when they go cruising for the first time. Traditionally, in a hotel room, the toilet uses a gravity-based flush system. That means when you push the handle, it releases the water into a gravity system and the water flows out into the sewage system. Well, not so on the cruise ships. Most of the cruise lines use a vacuum evac system where you push the button and all the waste, all the water is sucked out of the toilet into the sewage treatment system on the cruise ship. It's done for a couple reasons. Number one, it helps contain the sewage on the cruise ship, and there are special regulations that the cruise ships have to follow for how they manage that waste. And number two, it actually uses significantly less water, the evac vacuum system, opposed to the gravity system. So it's a conservation play, and it is also a containment play there on the cruise ship. But I tell you what, the noise that it makes the first time you hear it, it's very similar to an airplane bathroom, but it's got a couple other extra noises. It's got the sucking noise, it's got some clunking noises. The first time that you hit the button, if you're still seated, you're worried you might get sucked into the toilet. So very interesting, the toilet in the cruise bathroom. Now, as we get back out into the room, there are some differences. I'm thinking about storage. In most hotels that you go to, there will be some sort of dresser. A lot of times a TV setting on the dresser, chest of drawers where you can unpack your stuff. On most cruise lines, they don't have traditional dressers. Most of the storage is accomplished by using a closet system and cubbies. A lot of times you'll open the closet door and there will be cubbies where you can stack your clothes in. And then most of the cruise lines have a makeup area or a vanity where you can look into a mirror. And sometimes there'll be some drawers there, drawers that are good for your undergarments, just small things. But really no traditional dresser for the most part on your regular average cruise cabin. Access to electrical power can be another difference between the cruise cabin and a traditional hotel room. We were just in a hotel in Bethesda, Maryland, and I think they had 8 or 9 USB connections in addition to 5 or 6 outlets that you could plug into. On most cruise lines, the cruise cabin will have 1 outlet. I've never seen a cruise cabin that had more than 3 outlets, and they have limited USB connections on those outlets. But that is changing. Cruise lines recognize the need to charge charge up your gear, and you're starting to see more USB outlets put around the cruise cabin. But for the most part, when you go on a cruise, you need to be mindful that you need to take something with you that you can leverage one of those outlets to charge many things. We use a 6-port USB charger. I'll leave a link to that in the description below, along with a video where I talk about it. But I would be lost without that thing. I have so many things that I have to charge, and there's just not enough outlets in the cruise cabin, so you have to use something else. Very different than when you're in a traditional land-based hotel where you have good access to power. Air conditioning can be another interesting thing on the cruise cabin. Let me just say this, for example, I've been in a hotel room that I've cranked the AC all the way down and I've gotten too cold. I had to turn the AC back up. I've never had that experience in a cruise cabin. Depending on the cabin, you have limited or very limited access to the temperature in your cruise cabin. Usually there's a knob that'll let it go colder, but I've never walked into my cruise cabin and said, wow, I am just freezing. Can you turn the temperature up? So if you're somebody that likes things super cold, you like to have it super AC'd, you'll get cool in your cruise cabin, but I don't think you're ever gonna have that slightly in a cooler frozen feeling that you can sometimes get in the hotel room. So big difference there. You have AC, but it's not like hotel AC. Another interesting difference between the cruise cabin and the hotel room is the way the cruise cabin approaches beds. So when you go to a traditional hotel, you can get a room with 2 queens. Sometimes you can get 2 twins, 2 doubles. You can get a king size bed. You might have a sofa bed. But all those things those mattresses are what they are. If you go and get 2 queen beds, they're queen mattresses. If you get a king size bed, it's a king mattress. Not so with the cruise cabin. The cruise cabin is designed so that it can sleep people together in the same bed, or it can sleep people separately. And the way they accomplish that is they use twin size beds. So if you're a couple and you want to sleep next to each other, they'll push those twin size beds together to make a king, but you can feel the crease in between it. But if you're people that are traveling separate and you need your own bed, they slide those beds apart and they make 2 twins. But it's still 2 twins pushed together, 2 twins pushed apart. And then the other interesting thing that happens in cruise cabins that I don't see in hotels is they have beds that will drop down from the ceiling, so you can have a bunk bed situation. They have trundle beds sometimes, beds that slide under other beds, and you could see that in a hotel. But for the most part, the beds being just twin beds that are pushed together or separated, and then bunks that drop down from the ceiling, those are pretty unique to the cruising experience where you don't necessarily run into that in a traditional hotel. And another thing that sometimes you get accustomed to in a hotel room is access to a microwave, access to an ironing board, access to an iron. That's not the case on the cruise line. They don't have microwaves in the cruise cabins. They do not have ironing boards. They do not have irons. Many of the cruise cabins do have a refrigerator, so that's a similar experience to a hotel. But yeah, you can't use an iron on board, at least in your cabin. Some cruise lines have laundry rooms that have irons in it, but you're not gonna find that in your cruise cabin. Now this next one's interesting, and I really don't think I've ever seen this in a hotel room, but most cruise cabins come with a life vest. Inside the cruise cabin, a life jacket. We've been on a few cruise lines like Royal Caribbean and MSC where they actually keep the life jackets at the muster drill, but on cruise lines like Carnival and Princess, the life jacket's right there in the room in one of those closets. No hotel that I've been to had a life jacket, and so that's going to be an interesting addition that you get when you go on your cruise cabin. And honestly, the thing that I like about the ones that have it in the room, many times at the muster drill these days, they don't make you put on your life jacket. And so we've advocated this for a while. If you go on a cruise and the life jacket is there in your room, go ahead and try it on. That way you know how to put it on, so you're not trying to figure that out in an emergency. And over at Lido, Loca, we have a little bit of fun with that, and we like to take pictures with our life jackets, maybe in the shower sometimes with a drink. It's safety first, but yes, life jackets are a distinct feature in the cruise cabin that's not a distinct feature in the hotel room. So one thing I want to mention here doesn't really have to do anything with the physical aspect of the hotel room, but it has to do with staff interaction. If you think about how you interact with the staff at a regular hotel room, obviously you interact with the staff when you check in, and if you're staying in a hotel room for a couple days, you will usually have maid service, cleaning service once a day. And so in your mind, you're like, okay, if I go out to breakfast and I come back and the room is made up, I'm pretty confident that housekeeping will not be in my room again for the rest of the day. You can leave your stuff around, that kind of thing. Not so with the cruise ship. On the cruise cabin, it is one of those places where people could come into your room without you expecting it or knowing it. The room steward is constantly working in the room. If you request something from them, he may bring it when you're not there and drop it off. If somebody sends you something on the cruise ship, they will come in and drop it off. And many of the cruise lines offer 2 services a day. So you'll have your main cleaning, and then you could have an evening cleaning where they just tidy up the room, a turn down service. There is a lot of interaction with the person that cleans your room on the cruise ship, the steward, that's what they're called. And so you have to be prepared. If you're not prepared for that, it could catch you off guard. One of my more embarrassing situations on a cruise ship is I was taking a nap in a state of undress, and I didn't put the thing on the door that said, "Don't bother me." I knew they'd already cleaned the room once, and so I was just laying there in the somewhat hot room on top of the sheets and just my unmentionables, and somebody walked right in to give us something. It was super embarrassing, and now I'm very well trained to put the do not disturb when I'm taking a 15-minute nap, but I've never had that happen in a regular hotel situation. So just be mindful that when you go on a cruise, you're going to have a lot more interaction with the person that cleans your room steward, and you never know when somebody's going to pop in to drop off something. And so if you're changing, if you're getting ready, make sure you use the sign that says do not disturb so you don't get surprised and slightly embarrassed. It does happen. So were you shocked on your first cruise? What did you think the first time you encountered a cruise cabin? What's something that sticks out in your mind? I would love to hear your first cruise cabin story. Leave it in the comments below. This is Tony with Lido, Loca. Hope you found the information entertaining and informative. If so, please hit the like button, consider subscribing, and be on the lookout for our next video. I've got some more cruise videos in the description below, and there should be some popping up right now. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Again, Tony from Lido, Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.